Commander Vexthal sat in the white medical room, his 6 arms wrapped around his thin body. The blue lights above made everything look cold and strange. His large black eyes stared at the metal table between him and the doctor. 3 months had passed since he returned from the human world called Earth, but he still shook when he thought about it. Dr. Kellanth watched his patient carefully. She had seen many soldiers come back from battles, but never one like this. Vexthal had been the strongest warrior in the Zephyrian Empire's army. He had won fights on 12 different worlds. Other soldiers looked up to him. Now he jumped at small sounds and refused to eat solid food. "Tell me about Earth," Dr. Kellanth said in a soft voice. She pressed a button on her recording device. The High Command wanted to know everything about what happened during the invasion. Vexthal's breathing became fast and shallow. His hands started to shake. "Doctor, you don't understand. We thought we knew about humans. We watched their broadcasts for many years. We saw their movies and television shows. They looked weak and soft. They fought each other over small things. We thought they would be easy to defeat." The doctor made notes on her tablet. The High Command's report said the same thing. "Your fleet was confident when it left for Earth." "Yes, we were confident." Vexthal's voice was barely a whisper. "We had the best weapons in the galaxy. Our plasma cannons could destroy their buildings from space. Our energy shields could stop any attack they made. We had fought and won against species much stronger than humans." Dr. Kellanth nodded. "What changed your mind?" Vexthal closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet with tears. Everything about humans was wrong. "They don't fight like normal beings. They don't think like normal beings. They don't die like normal beings." "Explain what you mean." "When we study an enemy, we look at their military strength. We count their weapons and soldiers. We learn about their leaders and their plans. This works for every species we have fought. But humans are different. Their real strength is not in their military. It is in their minds, in their hearts. In something we don't have words for." The doctor leaned forward. "Try to describe it." Vexthal stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the purple sky of his home world looked normal and peaceful. But when he looked at it, he saw Earth's yellow sun. He saw the faces of humans he had fought. He saw their eyes. "We arrived at Earth on a Tuesday. I remember because humans care about what day it is. They name their days and live by schedules. We thought this made them weak and predictable. We were wrong again." He turned back to face the doctor. "My unit was ordered to take control of a small human settlement. The computer said it had less than 3,000 people. Most of them were farmers and shopkeepers. There were no military bases nearby. It should have been simple. What happened? We landed our ships in the fields outside the town. The humans saw us coming from far away. Most species would have run or surrendered, but not humans. They started talking to each other on their communication devices. They moved quickly, but not in panic. They had a plan." Dr. Kellanth wrote more notes. "Did they have weapons? Some had hunting rifles and pistols. Nothing that could hurt our armor or shields. But they had something more dangerous. They had imagination." Vexthal sat back down. His voice became stronger as he continued. "The first human we met was their local law enforcer, a female named Lisa Martinez. She was small, maybe half my size. She walked out to meet us with her hands empty, no weapons. No fear. She asked us what we wanted. What did you tell her?" "I told her we were taking control of her town. I said her people would not be harmed if they cooperated. I used the standard words we always use. They work on every species. They make surrender seem like the smart choice." "But not with humans?" She smiled. "Doctor, that smile still haunts me." She said, "Well, that's not going to work for us, just like that. Like we were asking her to change her schedule, not surrender her entire world." Dr. Kellanth felt a chill. She had heard reports about human facial expressions, but seeing their effect on a veteran soldier was disturbing. What happened next? She turned around and walked back to her town. She didn't run, she didn't beg, she just walked away. And that's when we knew something was wrong. In all our wars, no enemy had ever just walked away from us. Vexel's voice became quieter. Within 1 hour, everything changed. The humans had turned their peaceful town into a fortress. They used farm equipment to block roads. They made weapons from household chemicals. Children who should have been playing were carrying messages between adult fighters. How did your unit respond? We followed our training. We advanced into the town with overwhelming force. We expected the humans to scatter or hide. Instead, they came out to meet us, not just the adult males like in most species. Everyone, old people, young people, even some children. They all fought. The doctor stopped writing. Children fought. Against trained soldiers, not just fought. They fought smart. A human child named Bobby Chun, maybe 10 years old, came running toward our position. He was carrying something in his hands. My squad leader thought he was surrendering or looking for help. Most children do that when they see violence. What was he really doing? Vexel's whole body began to shake. He was carrying an explosive device. But that's not the worst part. When he got close to us, he looked right at my squad leader. He smiled, the same kind of smile Lisa Martinez had given me. Then he activated the device. Dr. Kellenth felt sick. He killed himself? He killed himself and took 3 of my soldiers. With him, but doctor, that smile. It wasn't the smile of someone who was scared or desperate. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what he was doing, someone who was happy to do it. That's impossible. No species allows children to fight. In wars, humans do, and they don't see it as wrong. They see it as necessary. That boy saved his family and friends by stopping our advance. In human thinking, that made him a hero, not a victim. The doctor put down her tablet. Vexel, you need to understand that what you experienced was unusual. Most species don't fight like that. That's what makes humans so dangerous. They don't fight like anyone else. They fight like they have nothing to lose, even when they have everything to protect. We studied their history before the invasion. They have been fighting each other for thousands of years. They know every trick, every strategy, every way to turn weakness into strength. But surely your superior technology gave you an advantage? Vexel laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Technology means nothing when your enemy doesn't follow the rules. We had shields that could stop their bullets. So they used fire. We had armor that could resist their explosives. So they used acid. We had communications that they couldn't break. So they used noise to confuse us. Noise? They played their music at us. Loud, terrible music that hurt our ears and made it hard to think. They used their own vehicle horns and sirens. They even had their children scream and shout. Not in fear, but as a weapon. They turned sound into torture. The doctor realized she was holding her breath. How long did this battle last? 3 days. 3 days to take one small town. We lost 47 soldiers. The humans lost maybe 200 people, but doctor, they never stopped fighting. Even when they were dying, they kept fighting. Even when they were wounded, they kept fighting. Even when they had no weapons left, they kept fighting. With what? With their bare hands. With their teeth. With rocks and sticks. With anything they could find. And they never, ever gave up. Dr. Kellenth looked at her patient. For the first time, she understood why the High Command was so concerned about the failed invasion. Vexel, what finally made you retreat from the town? We didn't retreat. We won, we killed or captured every human defender. We took control of their buildings and their resources. By all military standards, we had achieved victory. Then why do you seem so disturbed by it? Vexel looked at her with his large, dark eyes. Because, doctor, even though we won, we lost. We lost something important. We lost the idea that war could be civilized. We lost the belief that there are rules that everyone follows. We lost the feeling that we were fighting normal beings. What do you mean? After the battle, we found messages that the humans had sent to other towns. They weren't asking for help. They weren't saying goodbye. They were giving advice. They were telling other humans how to fight us better. Even while they were dying, they were thinking about how to help others win. The doctor felt a deep chill. What kind of advice? They told others about our weak spots, about how our shields work, about how to make weapons that could hurt us. They treated their own deaths as experiments, Doctor. They died to gather information for their species. Dr. Kellenth realized that the room had become very quiet. Even the recording device seemed to hum more softly. Vexthul, we need to continue this discussion tomorrow. You need rest? I don't sleep well anymore, Doctor. Every time I close my eyes, I see Bobby Chun smile. I see Lisa Martinez walking away from us. I see humans who kept fighting even when they were dying. I see a species that doesn't know how to quit. As the doctor prepared to leave, Vexthul spoke one more time. Doctor, the High Command thinks this was just one battle on one world. Dr. Kellenth returned to the medical room the next morning with fresh recording equipment. Vexthul looked even worse than before. His skin had turned a pale gray color, and his hands would not stop shaking. She had given him medicine to help him sleep, but the dark circles under his eyes showed it had not worked. Good morning, Vexthul. How are you feeling today? The commander looked up at her with tired eyes. I dreamed about them again, Doctor. The humans, they were all smiling at me, even the dead ones. Dr. Kellenth sat down and activated her recording device. Yesterday you told me about the small town. Today I want to hear about what happened after you took control of it. Vexthul nodded slowly. After we won the battle, the High Command was pleased. They thought the hardest part was over. They ordered us to move to larger human settlements. They said we would find the same kind of resistance, but with our experience, we could handle it easily. Were they right? No, Doctor. They were completely wrong. The humans had been learning too. Every message that the town defenders sent before they died had been received. Every piece of information about our weapons and tactics had been shared. The humans were adapting faster than we could plan. The doctor made notes on her tablet. Tell me about the next battle. We moved to a place called Denver. It was a large city with almost 3 million humans. Our scouts reported that it had normal defenses for a human settlement. Some military bases, some police stations, nothing that could stop our invasion force. But something was different. Vexthul stood up and walked to the window again. Everything was different. The humans had changed their entire city in just 3 days. They had turned every building into a fortress. They had dug tunnels under the streets. They had set up traps that we could not see until it was too late. What kind of traps? Simple. Things that worked perfectly. They put mirrors on buildings to reflect sunlight into our eyes. They spread oil on roads to make our vehicles slide. They hung wires across streets to catch our flying scouts. Nothing complex, but everything effective. Dr. Kellenth felt impressed, despite herself. That shows good tactical thinking. But that's just the beginning, Doctor. The real surprise was their leader, a human female named Lisa Martinez. The doctor looked up from her notes. The same Lisa Martinez from the small town? Yes. She had survived the battle and escaped before we could capture her. She had traveled to Denver and was organizing their defenses. In just 3 days, she had turned 3 million humans into a single fighting force. How is that possible? Humans have something we don't understand. They can work together even when they don't know each other. They can trust strangers with their lives. They can follow leaders they have never met before. Lisa Martinez spoke to them through their communication systems, and they listened. Vexthul sat back down, his voice becoming stronger as he continued. She divided the city into sections. Each section had different jobs. Some sections were for fighting. Some were for making weapons. Some were for taking care of wounded people. Some were for children and old people. But every section was connected to every other section. That sounds like standard military organization. No, Doctor. Standard military organization has ranks and orders. This was different. Every human knew what every other human was doing. They shared information instantly. They made decisions together. If one section was attacked, all sections knew about it immediately. Dr. Kellenth wrote more notes. What happened when you attacked the city? We used the same tactics that had worked in the small town. We surrounded the city and demanded surrender. We expected some resistance, but nothing we couldn't handle. And Lisa Martinez responded to our demand personally. She appeared on every communication device in the city. Every television screen, every radio, every computer. She looked directly at our cameras and spoke to us. What did she say? Vexthal's voice became very quiet. She said, "You made a mistake when you came to our world. You thought we were weak because we fight each other. But we only fight each other because we don't have real enemies. Now we do. Now you get to see what humans are really like when we work together." The doctor felt a chill. Did she threaten you? She didn't need to threaten us. She just smiled, that same smile I had seen in the small town. Then she said, "Come and take our city. We'll be waiting for you." What did your commanding officer decide? He ordered a full assault. We had 5,000 soldiers, 100 flying vehicles, and 20 heavy weapons platforms. The humans had no military vehicles that could match ours. No weapons that could penetrate our shields. No armor that could protect them from our plasma cannons. It should have been over in a few hours. Dr. Kellenth looked at her patient carefully, but it wasn't. It took us 6 weeks to take the city. 6 weeks, doctor. And by the time we won, we had lost over half our forces. The humans had lost maybe 100,000 people, but they never stopped fighting. They never even slowed down. How did they fight so effectively? They used everything, doctor. Everything in their city became a weapon. They turned their vehicles into bombs. They used their buildings as traps. They made their streets into killing zones. They turned their own infrastructure against us. Vexthal's hands began to shake again. But the worst part was how they fought together. We are trained to fight as individuals who work in units. Humans fight as a single organism with millions of parts. When we killed one fighter, 10 more appeared. When we destroyed one weapon, they built 3 more. When we captured one building, they abandoned 10 buildings and attacked us from 20 different directions. Give me a specific example. There was a human named Jake Thompson. He was a farmer, not a soldier. He had never fought in a war before, but he learned to use explosives from a video he watched on his computer. He learned to make traps from a book he read. He learned to coordinate with other fighters from talking to them on their communication devices. What did he do? He turned his farm equipment into weapons. He took machines that were made to plant crops and turned them into devices that could destroy our vehicles. He used his knowledge of soil and plants to create acid that could eat through our armor. He used his understanding of weather to predict when our flying vehicles would be weakest. Dr. Kellenth was writing quickly now. Did he survive? He died on the 15th day of the battle. But doctor, the way he died was the most disturbing thing I have ever seen. He drove one of his modified farming machines straight into our main command post. He had loaded it with explosives and chemicals. He knew he would die, but he also knew he would take our command structure with him. That sounds like a suicide attack. It was. But before he died, he was talking to other humans on his radio. He was giving them instructions. He was telling them how to make better weapons. He was sharing his knowledge so others could use it after he was gone. He died. Teaching, doctor, he died making his people stronger. The doctor stopped writing. How does that make you feel? Terrified, absolutely terrified. Because it means that every human death makes the surviving humans more dangerous. They don't just fight for themselves, they fight for their species. They fight for their future. They fight for ideas that will outlive them. Tell me about other humans you encountered. There was a female named Maria Santos. She was a gang leader before the invasion. She controlled criminals and thieves. When we arrived, she joined with the police and military. People who had been enemies became allies overnight. How did that work? She used her knowledge of illegal activities to help the legal authorities. She knew how to move people and supplies without being detected. She knew how to use violence efficiently. She knew how to make people afraid. All of these skills that had made her a criminal now made her a perfect resistance leader. What did she do? She created a network of tunnels under the city. She moved fighters and weapons through places we couldn't see. She coordinated attacks from positions we didn't know existed. She turned the city's underground into a weapon we couldn't fight. Vextel's voice became strained. But the most disturbing thing was how she worked with the other leaders. Lisa Martinez was the overall commander. Maria Santos controlled the underground. A human named Dr. Peter Kim handled their technology. A human named Colonel Amanda White led their military forces. They had never worked together before the invasion, but they functioned like parts of the same machine. How is that possible? They communicated constantly. They shared information without being ordered to. They trusted each other completely. They made decisions together even when they disagreed. They had arguments about tactics, but they never stopped cooperating. Dr. Kellenth looked at her notes. What was Dr. Peter Kim's role? He was their technology expert. He took human devices and made them work against us. He used their communication satellites to interfere with our systems. He modified their computers to break our codes. He turned their peaceful technology into weapons of war. Give me an example. He discovered that our communication systems used a frequency that was close to the frequency of human radio broadcasts. He modified their radio stations to broadcast signals that would confuse our equipment. Every time we tried to communicate with our ships, we heard human music instead. That seems like a minor inconvenience. It was much more than that, Doctor. Dr. Kellenth arrived at the medical room earlier than usual. She had spent the night reading reports about the human invasion, and what she found troubled her deeply. The official military records did not match what Vextel had told her. The reports made the invasion sound like a series of tactical errors, not a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. Vextel was already awake when she entered. He sat perfectly still in his chair, staring at the wall. His breathing was shallow and quick, like someone who had been running. Vextel, are you ready to continue our discussion? He turned to look at her, and she saw something new in his eyes. Not just fear, but a kind of desperate urgency. Doctor, I need to tell you about Chicago. The High Command needs to understand what happened there. They need to know why we can never go back to Earth. Dr. Kellenth activated her recording device and sat down. Tell me about Chicago. After Denver, the High Command was angry. They said we were being too careful, too slow. They ordered us to attack Chicago with full force. No more gradual assaults. No more trying to minimize casualties. They wanted us to crush human resistance completely. How large was the force they sent? 15,000 soldiers? 300 flying vehicles? 50 heavy weapons platforms? It was the largest invasion force we had ever assembled for a single city. The High Command was confident that we could take Chicago in 1 week. What made Chicago different from Denver? Vextel's voice became very quiet. The humans had been preparing. Not just the people in Chicago, but humans from all over their planet. They had been sharing information, sending supplies, and moving fighters to the city. By the time we arrived, Chicago was not just a city defending itself. It was a fortress defended by the entire human species. How many humans were there? The city normally had about 3 million people. When we arrived, there were almost 10 million. Humans from hundreds of other cities had come to fight us. They had turned Chicago into the biggest military base in human history. Dr. Kellenth felt a chill. What was their command structure like? They had learned from Denver. Instead of one leader, they had dozens of leaders working together. Each leader controlled a different part of the defense. But they all shared information instantly. They all made decisions together. They all supported each other completely. Who were the main leaders? Captain Ryan Brooks led their military forces. He was a human Marine who had studied our tactics from the previous battles. He knew exactly how we would attack and had prepared for every possibility. What kind of preparations? He had divided the city into sections that supported each other. When we attacked one section, the other sections would attack our flanks. When we concentrated our forces in one area, the other areas would attack our supply lines. He made it impossible for us to focus our strength anywhere. Vexthel stood up and began pacing around the room. But Captain Brooks was not the most dangerous human leader. The most dangerous was Sergeant Maria Santos. The same Maria Santos? From Denver? Yes, she had escaped during the final battle and traveled to Chicago. She brought with her all the knowledge she had gained about fighting us. She knew our weaknesses. She knew our tactics. She knew how to make us afraid. What did she do in Chicago? She organized what humans call urban guerrilla warfare. She used the city's underground tunnels, its abandoned buildings, its sewer systems. She turned every hidden space into a weapon against us. She made the city itself fight us. Give me an example. She discovered that our sensors could not detect humans who were completely underground. So she moved thousands of fighters through the tunnel systems under the city. While we were fighting the humans we could see, the humans we couldn't see were attacking us from below. Dr. Kellenth was writing rapidly. How effective was this tactic? Devastating. We would secure a building and then fighters would emerge. From the basement. We would control a street and then explosions would come from the sewers below. We would think an area was safe and then humans would attack us from underground passages we didn't know existed. What other tactics did they use? Dr. Peter Kim had also survived Denver. He had come to Chicago with new ways to use their technology against us. He had learned how to turn their civilian devices into military weapons. What do you mean? He took their cellular communication towers and turned them into jammers that blocked our communications. He used their traffic control systems to create traps for our vehicles. He modified their electrical grid to create electromagnetic pulses that damaged our equipment. Vexthel's voice became strained. But the most disturbing thing he did was turn their internet against us. He used their global communication network to coordinate attacks on our forces all over the planet. Every time we fought humans in one city, humans in every other city learned about it instantly. That sounds like standard military intelligence. No, Doctor. This was different. Humans were not just sharing information about our tactics. They were sharing information about our psychology. They were learning how to make us afraid, how to make us angry, how to make us make mistakes. How did they do that? They studied our behavior during battles. They recorded how we reacted to different situations. They experimented with different ways to confuse us and frighten us. They turned psychological warfare into a science. Dr. Kellenth looked up from her notes. What kind of psychological warfare? They played recordings of human children crying. They broadcast images of human families being separated. They made us listen to human music that hurt our ears. They used our own empathy against us. I don't understand. Humans discovered that. We felt guilty about killing their children. So they deliberately put their children in situations where we would see them. They made us choose between completing our mission and protecting innocent lives. They used our conscience as a weapon. That's horrible. It was effective. Many of our soldiers refused to fight when they saw human children in danger. Some of our soldiers deliberately missed their targets to avoid hurting innocent humans. Some of our soldiers stopped fighting completely. Vexthel sat back down, his hands shaking. But the children were not innocent, Doctor. They were part of the strategy. Human children were carrying messages, building weapons, setting traps. They were fighters, not victims. But they looked like victims, and that made us hesitate. How? Did this affect your military effectiveness? We became slow and uncertain. We started making mistakes. We began to doubt our orders and our mission. We started to see humans as people instead of enemies, and that made it almost impossible to fight them effectively. Tell me about the actual fighting. The battle for Chicago lasted 3 months. 3 months, Doctor. We had every advantage. Better weapons, better armor, better training. But the humans had something we didn't have. They had the ability to learn from every mistake and become stronger. What do you mean? Every time we used a tactic that worked, the humans found a way to counter it. Every time we developed a new weapon, they found a way to defend against it. Every time we thought we understood their strategy, they changed it completely. Can you give me specific examples? We discovered that our plasma weapons could not be stopped by human armor, so we started using them more frequently. Within 1 week, humans had developed new tactics that made our plasma weapons less effective. They used smoke to block our targeting. They used mirrors to reflect our beams. They used water to disperse our energy blasts. How did they develop these countermeasures so quickly? They had scientists working on the problem constantly. Not just military scientists, but civilian scientists. University professors, high school teachers, even students. They had turned their entire educational system into a weapon research program. Dr. Kelleth felt sick. Their entire educational system? Yes, human children were learning how to fight us in their schools. They were studying our technology and finding ways to defeat it. They were being trained to be soldiers from a very young age. What about their adult population? Every human adult was a potential fighter. Factory workers built weapons. Office workers planned strategies. Doctors treated wounded fighters and then returned to combat. Teachers organized resistance cells. Even artists and musicians created propaganda that made humans more willing to fight. How did this affect your soldiers' morale? It destroyed morale completely. We realized that we were not fighting an army, we were fighting an entire species. Every human we met was either actively fighting us or supporting those who were. There were no neutral humans. There were no innocent humans. There were only humans who wanted to kill us. Vexthel's voice became very quiet. Doctor, do you know what the most terrifying moment of the entire war was for me? Tell me. I was wounded during a battle in downtown Chicago. I was trapped in a building with no way to escape. I expected to die there. But then a human child found me. She was maybe 8 years old. She had medical supplies. What did she do? She treated my wounds. She gave me water and food. She spoke to me in a gentle voice and tried to comfort me. For a moment, I thought that maybe there were good humans who didn't want to fight. But while she was helping me, she was also studying me. She was learning about our anatomy, our weaknesses, our equipment. Dr. Kelleth entered the medical room to find Vexthel sitting on the floor in the corner. He had pulled his knees up to his chest and was rocking back and forth slowly. His breathing was rapid and shallow, and his eyes were focused on something. She could not see. Vexthel, what's wrong? He looked up at her with wide, frightened eyes. I remembered something new, doctor. Something I had tried to forget. Something about the mountains. She helped him back to his chair and activated the recording device. Tell me about the mountains. After Chicago, the high command was furious. They said we were cowards. They said we were making excuses. They ordered us to attack a place called Norad. It was a human military base built inside a mountain in Colorado. Why was this base important? The humans were using it to coordinate their global defense. All of their military communications went through this base. All of their strategic planning happened there. The High Command believed that if we could capture it, we could break human resistance everywhere. Dr. Kelleth made notes on her tablet. How large was the attacking force? 20,000 soldiers, 500 flying vehicles, 100 heavy weapons platforms. It was the largest force we had ever assembled for a single target. The High Command was absolutely certain we would succeed. What made them so confident? The base was isolated. It was far from major human cities. It had maybe 5,000 human defenders. We outnumbered them 4-1. We had better weapons and better equipment. By every military calculation, we should have won easily. Vexthel's voice became strained, but the humans had a leader there. A female named General Patricia Hayes. She was different from the other human leaders we had fought. How was she different? The other human leaders fought to protect their people and their cities. General Hayes fought to protect an idea. She fought to protect the concept of human independence. She was willing to sacrifice anything to preserve human freedom. What do you mean? When we surrounded the mountain base, she sent a message to all human settlements around the world. She told them that she was going to make a sacrifice that would give them time to prepare for our attacks. She was going to delay us for as long as possible, even if it meant everyone in the base would die. Dr. Kelland felt a chill. How did she plan to delay you? She had prepared a trap, Doctor. Not just for our forces attacking the base, but for our entire invasion strategy. She was going to teach us something about humans that would change everything. What kind of trap? She had convinced the human government to abandon 3 of their major cities: Denver, Phoenix, and Salt Lake City. They evacuated all the civilians and moved all valuable resources. Then they invited us to attack those cities. Why would they do that? Because they wanted us to think we were winning. They wanted us to believe that humans would surrender their cities rather than fight for them. They wanted us to become overconfident and make mistakes. Vexthal stood up and walked to the window. While we were celebrating our easy victories in the abandoned cities, General Hayes was preparing her real strategy. She was turning the mountain base into the most dangerous trap in military history. How? She had spent months studying our tactics and psychology. She knew exactly how we would attack the base. She knew what routes we would use, what weapons we would deploy, what formations we would choose. She had prepared for every possibility. What did she do with this knowledge? She turned our own strengths against us. She knew we relied on our superior technology, so she created an environment where technology would not help us. She knew we preferred organized formations, so she forced us to fight in chaos. She knew we avoided casualties, so she made every meter cost us lives. Dr. Kelland was writing rapidly. Describe the battle. It lasted 6 weeks. 6 weeks to attack one base with 5,000 defenders. We lost 12,000 soldiers. But doctor, that's not the worst part. The worst part is what General Hayes taught us about human nature. What did you learn? We learned that humans will sacrifice their own people to achieve strategic goals. We learned that they will accept massive losses if those losses serve a larger purpose. We learned that they think about war differently than any other species in the galaxy. Vexthal's voice became very quiet. On the 3rd week of the battle, General Hayes received a message from the human government. They told her that they could no longer support her position. They told her to surrender to save lives. They offered to negotiate with us for her safe passage. What did she do? She refused. She sent a message back saying that her mission was more important than her life or the lives of her soldiers. She said that every day she delayed us was another day for human settlements to prepare their defenses. She chose to die rather than abandon her strategic purpose. How did her soldiers react? They agreed with her. All of them. 5,000 human soldiers chose to die rather than surrender. They knew they could not win. They knew they would all be killed. But they also knew that their deaths would serve a purpose, and that was enough for them. Dr. Kelland felt sick. How could an entire military unit make that decision? Because they were not thinking like individuals, Doctor. They were thinking like parts of a larger organism. They saw their lives as resources to be spent for the benefit of their species. They were willing to die if their deaths made other humans safer. What was the turning point of the battle? There was a human soldier named Staff Sergeant Danny Rodriguez. He was assigned to defend a mountain pass that controlled access to the base. It was a critical position that we needed to capture to complete our assault. How many soldiers did he have? 50. We attacked his position with 500 soldiers and 20 flying vehicles. He should have been overwhelmed in minutes. Instead, he held the pass for 6 hours. Vexthal's hands began to shake. Doctor, I was there. I saw what he did. I watched him fight like no being should be able to fight. What did he do? When his heavy weapons were destroyed, he used light weapons. When his light weapons ran out of ammunition, he used explosives. When his explosives were gone, he used rocks and debris. When he had no weapons left, he used his bare hands. How could one soldier hold off 500? He knew the terrain perfectly. He had prepared traps and obstacles. He used the mountain itself as a weapon. But most importantly, he refused to retreat even when retreat was the logical choice. What happened to his unit? They were all killed in the first hour of fighting. But Rodriguez continued to fight alone. He moved from position to position, always staying just ahead of our advance. He turned the entire mountain pass into a maze of death traps and ambush points. Double quotes. Dr. Kellenth looked up from her notes. How did he finally die? We cornered him at the top of the pass. He had no ammunition, no explosives, no weapons at all. He was badly wounded and could barely walk. We offered him the chance to surrender with honor. Did he accept? He laughed. He actually laughed at us. Then he said something I will never forget. He said, "You guys still don't get it, do you? This isn't about winning or losing. This is about making you pay for every inch." Then he triggered a landslide that killed himself and 17 of our soldiers. He killed himself? He sacrificed himself to achieve one final tactical advantage. Even in death, he was still fighting us. Even when he had no hope of survival, he was still trying to hurt us. Vexthel sat back down, his voice becoming very quiet. But doctor, the most disturbing thing was what happened after he died. What happened? He had been broadcasting the entire battle to other human forces. They had been listening to his tactics, learning from his strategies, studying his methods. When he died, he became a teacher for every other human defender. How? Do you know this? Because in every battle after that, we encountered humans who fought exactly like Danny Rodriguez. They used his tactics, they copied his strategies. They died the same way he died. He had turned his own death into a training program for his species. Dr. Kellenth felt a deep horror. What was the final result of the battle for Norad? We took the base. We captured General Hayes and the surviving defenders. But it cost us 12,000 soldiers in 2 months of time. And by the time we won, human forces around the world had used that time to become much stronger. What happened to General Hayes? She was executed by firing squad according to military law. But before she died, she requested permission to send one final message to human forces worldwide. What did she say? She gave them detailed information about our tactics, our weaknesses, and our psychology. She told them exactly how to fight us more effectively. She used her own execution as an opportunity to make her species more dangerous. How did this affect your forces? We realized that we could never truly defeat humans because they learned from every defeat. We realized that every human death made the surviving humans smarter and more dangerous. We realized that we were fighting a species that evolved through conflict. Vexthel looked directly at the doctor. Doctor, do you understand what this means? It means that humans are not just another species. They are a species that improves through adversity. They become stronger when they are attacked. They unite. When they are threatened, they evolve when they are challenged. What was the High Command's reaction to the battle? They were shocked by our losses. Dr. Kellenth arrived at the medical room to find Vexthel packing his few belongings into a small bag. His movements were slow and careful, like someone who was very tired or very old. When he saw her, he stopped and sat down in his chair one last time. This is our final session, Doctor. Tomorrow I will be transferred to the long-term care facility. The High Command has decided that I am no longer fit for military service. She sat down and activated her recording device. Before you go, I need to hear about the end of the invasion. I need to know what finally made the High Command order the retreat. Vexthel nodded slowly. The end came faster than anyone expected. After Norad, the High Command ordered attacks on 3 major human cities, New York, Los Angeles, and Houston. They believed that destroying these cities would break human morale and force surrender. What happened instead? The humans were ready. For us, not just militarily ready, but psychologically ready. They had prepared their entire population for the possibility of losing their biggest cities. They had moved critical resources to smaller towns. They had trained civilians to become soldiers. They had turned every human settlement into a potential military base. Dr. Kellenth made notes. How did the attacks proceed? We surrounded the 3 cities simultaneously. We demanded immediate surrender. We offered to spare civilian lives if the humans would capitulate to our rule. Did they consider surrender? The response came from Admiral Helen Foster. She was the supreme commander of all human military forces. Her message was broadcast to our entire fleet and to every human settlement on Earth. What did she say? Vexthal. Voice became very quiet. She said, "You have made a fundamental error in understanding what humans are. You think we are afraid of death? You think we value our cities more than our freedom? You think we will trade our independence for safety? You are wrong about all of these things." How did she explain this? She told us that humans had been preparing for this moment since our first landing. Every battle we had fought, every city we had taken, every human we had killed had been part of their preparation. They had been learning about us while we thought. We were defeating them. Dr. Kellant felt a chill. What did she mean? She meant that the entire invasion had been a test for humans. They had used our attacks as training exercises. They had allowed us to win some battles so they could study how we fought. They had sacrificed some cities so they could learn how to defend others better. That's impossible. I thought so too. But then she proved it. She began broadcasting detailed information about our military capabilities, our tactical preferences, our psychological weaknesses. Information that could only have been gathered through careful observation during many battles. Vexthal stood up and walked to the window. "Doctor, Admiral Foster knew things about our military that our own high command didn't know. She understood our strategies better than our own generals. She had turned our invasion into an education program for human forces." What was her final message to your fleet? She said something that still gives me nightmares. She said, "Thank you for coming to our world. Thank you for showing us what we need to become. Thank you for teaching us how dangerous the galaxy really is. We are stronger now because of you. We are more united now because of you. We are more prepared now because of you." What did she mean? She meant that humans had used our invasion to evolve. They had taken everything we taught them about advanced warfare and made it part of their own military knowledge. They had absorbed our technology, our tactics, our strategies, and made them better. Dr. Kellant was writing rapidly. How did the final battles proceed? They didn't proceed at all? Within hours of Admiral Foster's message, human forces began attacking our positions simultaneously around the globe. Not just in the 3 cities we were besieging, but everywhere we had troops. How was that possible? Because while we had been focused on our major targets, humans had been preparing coordinated strikes against all of our positions. They had been moving forces, stockpiling weapons, and planning attacks on every Zephyrian unit on Earth. What kind of attacks? Devastating attacks, precise attacks. Attacks that showed complete understanding of our weaknesses and capabilities. They hit our command centers, our supply lines, our communication networks, and our escape routes all. At the same time, Vexthal's hands began to shake. But doctor, the most terrifying thing was not their military effectiveness. It was their attitude. They were not angry or desperate. They were calm and confident. They fought like they had already won. What do you mean? I mean they fought like they were following a plan that could not fail. Like they had foreseen every possibility and prepared for every contingency. Like our defeat was inevitable and they were just going through the motions of making it happen. How long did the final battles last? 72 hours. In 3 days, human forces destroyed or captured 60% of our invasion fleet. They disabled our major weapons platforms, captured our supply ships, and surrounded our remaining ground forces. What happened to the Zephyrian command structure? It collapsed completely. Our communications were jammed, our orders were contradictory, our units were isolated and confused. We found ourselves fighting a war we no longer understood against an enemy that seemed to anticipate our every move. Dr. Kellant looked up from her notes. What was the final order from the High Command? Complete withdrawal, immediate evacuation of all remaining forces. No attempt to recover captured equipment or personnel. Just escape from Earth as quickly as possible. How did the evacuation proceed? It was chaos. Pure chaos. Human forces had surrounded our landing sites and were systematically destroying our transport ships. Many of our soldiers were trapped on Earth with no way to escape. What happened to those soldiers? That's the most disturbing part of the entire story, Doctor. The humans captured thousands of our soldiers, but they didn't execute them or torture them. They treated them with medical care and basic respect. That sounds reasonable. No, Doctor. It was psychological warfare of the highest order. They were showing us that they could defeat us completely and still maintain their moral principles. They were proving that they were superior to us, not just militarily but ethically. Vexthel sat back down, his voice becoming very quiet. But the worst thing they did was what happened after we surrendered our wounded. What happened? Human children sent care packages to our soldiers in the medical ships. Drawings, food, letters wishing them well. The children were trying to comfort soldiers who had just finished trying to kill their families. How did this affect your soldiers? It broke them emotionally. Many of them refused to eat or speak. Some of them asked to be left on Earth rather than return home. They said they could not face their own people after experiencing human compassion. Why was this so disturbing? Because it meant that humans could maintain their humanity even while fighting a war for their survival. They could show mercy to enemies who had shown them none. They could forgive beings who had tried to destroy their entire species. Dr. Kellenth felt sick. What was Admiral Foster's final communication to your fleet? She waited until our ships were leaving Earth's orbit. Then she sent one last message to our retreat fleet. It was very short, just 6 words. Come back anytime. We'll be waiting. What did that mean? It meant that humans were not afraid of us anymore. It meant they were confident they could defeat any future invasion. It meant they were actually inviting us to try again because they knew they would win. How did this message affect the fleet? Half our soldiers requested transfers to non-combat positions. A quarter of our officers resigned their commissions. Many of our ship's crews refused to serve on vessels that might return to human space. The entire military structure of our invasion force collapsed. Vexthel looked directly at the doctor. Doctor, do you know what the most terrifying realization was for me personally? Tell me. I realized that humans had not been fighting for their lives during the invasion. They had been playing with us. They had been experimenting on us. They had been using us as test subjects to study advanced warfare. How do you know this? Because everything they did showed careful planning and preparation that went far beyond defending against our specific invasion. They were preparing for wars against enemies they had never met. They were developing capabilities for conflicts that had not yet begun. What do you mean? I mean that humans used our invasion as practice for fighting other alien species. They learned how to defeat advanced technology, how to counter superior numbers, how to fight enemies with different psychology and tactics. They turned our attack into training for future conflicts. Dr. Kellenth was quiet for a long moment. What is your assessment of human military capabilities now? Humans are the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. Not because they have the best weapons or the largest armies, but because they have the best military minds. They can learn from any conflict, adapt to any enemy, and overcome any disadvantage. What makes them so effective? They think about war differently than any other species. Most species fight wars to achieve specific goals. Humans fight wars to become better at fighting wars. Every conflict makes them stronger. Every enemy teaches them something new.